do is appeal to other passages and say, okay, and our general knowledge of the views of Jesus and the apostles to get some clarity on this. I think an argument against this is just the apostles and it died with them view is that the church is going to have an ongoing need for leadership. And even if it was Jesus's will that the apostles pass from the scene, it wasn't his will that leadership pass from the scene in the church, because he appointed leaders and the apostles appointed other leaders to succeed them. On the other hand, what about this applies to every single Christian view? Well, the power to bind and loose referred to the ability to make binding laws and or to release laws that were previously binding. That's just what the phrase meant in first century Judaism. So can any two Christians make a law that's binding for the entire Christian community? Well, that is not how laws work. You don't have just any two random members of a community being able to make laws that are binding for the entire community. If you did, chaos would result, because everybody, I saw a parody a few years ago about a wiki constitution of the United States, where the constitution that anybody can edit. And all of a sudden, we've got all these mandatory firearms ownership requirement amendments, and abortion restrictions and everything. It would be huge chaos if everybody could make binding law. So on the one hand, we need ongoing leadership in the church, which would suggest it's more than the apostles, but it can't be everybody gets to make the rules, because that would be chaotic and nonsensical. Instead, given that this is a rule-making function, the power to bind and loose, it would naturally be vested in the leaders of the community. And because that's how lawmaking works. The leaders get to make the laws. They need to be responsible. They need to take into account the needs of the people they're governing. But it's the leaders that get to make the laws, not every individual or two or three individuals. So it seems to me that the middle interpretation is most likely the correct one. One could debate that, but that's the way it seems to me.
And that is where we will have to leave it, because we've got to take a quick break. Thank you very, very much for the call. Appreciate you getting us started, Joseph. Lots more folks on the line. So back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
We're here for you. Call now. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
I don't like looking back. I prefer to look forward and keep moving forward. There's plenty to cover. I do a lot of research and try to dig out the bits and pieces of a life or of an agenda that people don't want to talk about.
The World Over with Raymond Arroyo. Tonight, 8 Eastern on EWTN Radio and Television.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. At least the ad does not have the word spiffy in it this time. Looking for the perfect book to explain the faith to non-Catholic friends and family? We've got just the ticket. Why We're Catholic. More than 400,000 copies in print, and 6 years as the #1 book in its category on Amazon. More than 1,600 5-star reviews. The book has helped a lot of people to understand what it is we believe as Catholics. And if you'd like to give that help to someone else or maybe get it for yourself, it's just $10 right now at shop.catholic.com. $10 for Why We're Catholic at shop.catholic.com. It's open forum today, second hour. We'll have Jim Blackburn here with us. This hour, Jimmy Akin here, and you are welcome to call with whatever question you've got. 888-318-7884. Claire is in Cincinnati, Ohio. Claire, thank you for the call. Are you there with us?
Yes.
Hello, Claire. How old are you?
11.
And I think we might have spoken to you before, Claire. Have we spoken to you before?
Yes.
Well, it's nice to hear from you again. Go ahead with your question for Mr. Aiken.
If Mary carried Jesus for a long time, she didn't get affected. Like when Moses went up to Mount Sinai to get the Ten Commandments, he came down with white hair. So why didn't Mary get affected?
I'm sorry, Claire, I missed part of what you said. You said Moses came down with what?
White hair.
He came, yeah.
Okay.
He got affected. But
Right.
Mary
No,
didn't.
I understand. I just needed clarification, Psychelet, on specifically what she said, because it sounded to me like she might have said white hands. And if that was the case, I would correct and say, no, he had, according to the text, a glowing face. It's not. It's also not white hair. It's his face was reported to glow, and so why didn't Mary have that happen? Well, this is a mystery. God doesn't tell us why it didn't happen. We can speculate. One reason is that Mary didn't see God face to face the way Moses did, and so her face would not have been affected. Another thing that's different is God presumably wanted the Israelites to see that Moses had been affected by his encounter with God. He wanted Moses to be a leader. He didn't want people to challenge Moses's authority. And so to communicate to the Israelites that I've met this man and he is my servant and you need to listen to him, he let Moses's face glow. But God didn't want that for Mary. He didn't want everybody to know that she was the mother of the Messiah, which could cause things like King Herod, for example, trying to find the child and kill him. It could cause other problems too. So he wanted Christ to be born in a situation where only a few people knew about him. And consequently, and when other people found out, like when Herod found out, they had to flee to Egypt for a period. And so he didn't want everybody knowing about Jesus. And so that could be one reason why he didn't have Mary affected in a special way that would make her look different from other pregnant women. On the other hand, she was affected by the pregnancy, including her physical appearance. You know, she would have grown large with Jesus towards the end of the pregnancy. And, you know, pregnant women, even though it's poetry rather than literally true, people often say pregnant women glow. And Mary may have glowed in that sense, but she didn't glow in the sense of having physical light radiating from her face the way Moses is reported to have.
Okay, Claire? Yeah. Oh, do we have Claire? Claire, that all makes sense to you?
Yes.
Oh,
yes. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the call. It's always nice when you call here. You do a very good job, and you're always welcome to call again. I hope we talk to you soon.
Yeah. Kids generally do a very good job. They know what their question is, and they ask it. They don't feel the need to give the secret origin story of their question first.
I know, because they got a lot of questions. That's their habit, is just get to the question. What a nice call. What a very nice call. Charlie is in Wichita, Kansas. I don't know if he's a lineman, listening on 96.7 FM. Charlie, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Thank you for taking my question. Can you paint some color and clarity on the difference between the reverence that appears to differentiate between the American founding's perception between Catholicism and Protestantism? And I'll take my call offline.
Well, if I understand the question correctly, there are different attitudes somewhat different attitudes towards the founding of the United States in Protestant and Catholic circles in the United States. Now, if you go outside of the United States, you're going to find other Protestant views. Historically, most nations have not been democratic republics the way the United States is. Historically, most nations have been monarchies. And there was even skepticism about the American Revolution and our experiment in democracy in other countries in the past. So, and I'm sure there is some today as well, but especially in the past, like, for example, in England, which we broke away from, the attitude was like, oh, those foolish Americans, this democracy thing is never going to work. Democracy never lasts. They need a king. People just need kings. And therefore, this is a foolish experiment and it's going to blow up in their faces. And one could even point to the Civil War as an example of it blowing up in our faces. But ultimately, the United States, survived, and we've been able to build a reputation. But if you go back and talk to Protestants in England at the time of the American Revolution, they would have had a rather negative view of it. Well, that's quite different than the view that the original reformers, the original revolutionaries had here in America. Because they were the ones doing the revoluting, they had a positive, attitude towards what they were doing. Nobody looks in the mirror and sees a villain. So regardless of what side you're on, you're going to see your own actions as positive. And the revolutionaries viewed their own actions as positive. And of course, they won. So that has been passed down here in America, and lots of Americans have been very proud of what happened. There are critics here within America too, but by and large, most Americans have a degree of pride and happiness and reverence for the founding fathers. Now, America also is a dominantly Protestant country historically. Now, these days, it's about a quarter Catholic, but historically in the past, it was like 95% plus Protestant. And so you had a lot of people who had been influenced by the rah, 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 go America, we're doing our bold experiment in democracy, and we're going to show the world. And our founding fathers were regarded as supremely wise men. And in fact, in many ways, they were. I mean, they came up with the concept of the separation of powers and only gave certain functions to different branches of government so that no one branch of government could dominate, which had been one of the things that had caused previous democracies to become monarchies. If one person is able to get all the power, then you're going to have a monarchy again, whether you call it a monarchy or not. And so spreading the power around, so not one branch does not have all the power. That was actually a very wise move. And so Americans have been proud of that. Now, what about the Catholic community? Well, Catholics don't have I think a lot of Catholics are just as influenced by American culture as Protestant Americans are, and they also look back on the founding fathers with comparable enthusiasm. I think there's a little bit of a difference in that Catholics tend to have, at least educated Catholics, tend to have a broader historical perspective. And one of the things that the Catholic tradition incorporates is a recognition that there's not just one acceptable form of government to God. God can work with monarchies. He can work with oligarchies, which is where you have more than one guy, but a select group of people who are in charge. And he can work with democracies. And God doesn't mandate a single form of government for everybody. So Catholics can look back on the founding of America by the founding fathers with pride and appreciation. But we wouldn't look at it as, oh, this is the only way it ever could have worked in accordance with God's will. And so we can be appreciative of it, but may not be quite as gung-ho about, oh, God, this was God's will that we do it exactly this way. And I think if they think about it, a lot of Protestant Americans would recognize, too, that it could have worked different ways than it did, and God didn't mandate exactly the way it happened, that this was an acceptable way in God's plan to govern a nation, but it wasn't the only possible one.
Charlie hung up because he said he was going to listen offline, and he did, I assume. Charlie, I hope that answer was helpful to you, and thank you very much for the call. I'm going to go to San Antonio, Texas now. Daniel is watching on YouTube. Daniel, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Yeah, how's it going, guys? First of all, I want to say you guys make up my favorite tag team of a human and a cyborg.
Oh,
and
wait. Which one of us is the cyborg? Just so that I know. I think I have suspicion, but which one of us?
I think it goes without saying.
Okay, all right, fine. That's fine.
Jimmy.
Okay. Go ahead, Daniel.
Okay, Jimmy. So my question was, I was listening to your dialogue with William and Craig on Pints of Aquinas channel, and I did have one difficulty. It doesn't seem like a logical contradiction, but it would seem that an eternal universe would be independent from God, or at least have some sort of divine attribute. And I was wondering how that isn't problematic or like not a logical contradiction, or wouldn't. I guess it wouldn't be a logical contradiction, but it would seem problematic to hold as a Christian.
Okay, so what would be problematic about it?
Oh, like I said, and maybe it just would seem like the universe at that point would be independent from God. If
Okay,
it had that.
not in Aquinas' view. So in Aquinas' view, if God chose to create a universe that has an eternal history, that would no more make the universe independent of God than if he chose to create a universe that has an infinite future, which he did, because we're always going to exist. There's a little more to say, and I'll say it on the other side of the break.
Daniel, thank you. If you can hang on, that would be great. We'll get you that answer, the rest of that answer on the other side of the break. It's open forum. Jimmy Akin, our guest, one line open, 888-318-7884. Excitement is building for Catholic Answers Annual Apologetics Conference, I Believe in God. There's still time to join us September 21st through 24th in sunny San Diego as we welcome Scott Hahn and an all-star lineup of speakers, as well as your favorite Catholic Answers apologists. Join us for a conference that is sure to ignite, encourage, and inform your faith. Seats are still available, but they're going fast. Visit CatholicAnswersConference.com or call 888-291-8000.
If you're not a Bible scholar, the full message of how the Sunday Mass readings fit together can be tough to comprehend. Apologist Carlo Broussard is here to help. Join Carlo every Friday for the Sunday Catholic Word podcast. In each episode, he unpacks the scripture readings for that Sunday and brings them all together so you can better understand and defend the faith. Visit SundayCatholicWord.com to subscribe. That's SundayCatholicWord.com.
What if the voice of your deepest doubts about Catholicism rose up in the form of a human being and challenged you to defend your most foundational beliefs? That's the task apologist Trent Horn took upon himself in his new book, Devil's Advocate, a dialogue with his own best objections against the faith that he professes and defends. You can stand up against your doubts, and Trent will show you how. Pick up your copy of Devil's Advocate today at shop.catholic.com or at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers monthly giving club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
Hi, this is Janet Williams. You don't have to be a woman to enjoy Women of Grace tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern here on EWTN Radio. Now, back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. A little bit of groovy music there. That means it's Thursday. Almost always means Jimmy Akin is here, and both of those things are good. You're welcome to call 888-318-7884 and ask whatever question you've got on your mind. Daniel is in San Antonio, Texas, and was asking about how could an eternal universe be a creation of God. He said those two things don't seem to go together.
Well, he said that the universe would seem to be independent of God if it had an infinite past. But when considering any argument dealing with an infinite past, one of the first steps one should try is flipping the arrow of time and seeing if the argument still works. So instead of contemplating a universe with an infinite past, let's contemplate a universe that has an infinite future. And in fact, we live in such a universe. God created the universe. It has no end point. We're going to exist and reign with Christ forever. So we have an infinite future in front of us. But the mere fact that we have an infinite future in front of us doesn't make the universe independent of God, because it would not exist without God. So in his eternal now, God has created a universe with an infinite future. Time isn't passing for God. He's outside of time. He just went splat. There's a universe. It's got an infinite future. But that universe wouldn't exist if it wasn't for God's creative act in the eternal now. So now let's flip the arrow of time in the other direction. Well, God in his eternal now, if he had chosen, could just go splat. There's a universe with an infinite history. And that universe would not exist if it wasn't for God creating it. And so as a result, that universe would not be independent of God. And similarly, if God in his eternal now chose to go splat, there's a universe with an infinite history and an infinite future. Well, once again, that universe would not exist if it wasn't for God's creative act. And therefore, the universe would not exist without God. And therefore, the universe is not independent of God. Does that help clarify things, Daniel, or is there another difficulty with this that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, no, that really clears it up. Just pointing the arrow in a different direction helps me make sense of it.
Awesome.
All right, Daniel, thanks very, very much. I also like the use of the word splat to signify God's creative moment, so to speak.
It is a spiffy word.
It is very spiffy. Now I'll see what you've done to me. Let's go to Andy in Phoenix, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Andy, thank you for waiting. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi. Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So this is the question I have. So I've been listening to a lot of Jimmy Akin, Joe Heschmeyer, and Trent Horn. And when one of Trent Horn's videos, he mentioned that so it's like an introduction to becoming apologetic.
I'm sorry, John. John, I'm having trouble hearing you. Can you speak directly into the phone, please?
Can you hear me better now?
Much.
Quite a bit.
Yeah. People should never
Okay.
use speakerphone when they're going on the radio. Thank you.
Okay. What was the last thing you guys remember me saying?
You said you listened to me, Trent, and Joe.
Oh, yeah, okay. And then in one of Trent's videos, he mentioned about when becoming an apologetic, it's important to be specialized in a specific area, whether it be like you or Trent Horn defending the faith or something like bioethics. And the question I have is, what's a specific area in apologetics that really needs to like support and someone to be specialized in?
Well, so I might have a somewhat different view in that I tend to be a generalist. I don't tend to focus in just one area of apologetics. Now, if I'm breaking into apologetics, then I might focus in a particular area that had work that needed to be done. And in fact, that's what I did. My training actually was in Christian apologetics generally. So I, was a philosophy major. I was a grad student in philosophy, and I was specialized in arguments defending the Christian faith in general, including, for example, interacting with atheism. But when I came to work for Catholic Answers, I wasn't given the opportunity to do work interacting with atheism. At the time at Catholic Answers, the big focus was on doing Protestant Catholic apologetics. And that's something I also had a background in because I had converted from Protestantism to Catholicism. So I had a knowledge of that area, and I used that. I actually, and I've told Trent this, but I'm actually a little jealous that by the time he came around, Catholic Answers has expanded and he got the chance to interact with atheism, whereas I was not given that chance early on in my apologetics career. But, careers develop over time. And so after I began implementing Protestant Catholic apologetics, I continued to study. I'm an autodidact, and so I'm constantly teaching myself something. And I began to study, for example, the Church Fathers and became knowledgeable about patristics. I began to study the liturgy and became knowledgeable about the liturgy. I began to study canon law and became knowledgeable about canon law. I continue to study the Bible and biblical background, so I continue to grow in that area. These days, I'm studying parapsychology, so I'm trying to pull in information from all different areas. I don't want to, as one of my career goals, I don't want to leave the field of apologetics the same as it was when I began. I don't want to just repeat the same arguments that other apologists are using. I want to bring new information into the field of apologetics, and I do so in a generalist way, moving from one area to another and trying to build a broad foundation that will allow me to interact with many different areas, science, all kinds of different things. So if it's simply a question of finding an area to focus on as one breaks into apologetics, I would say it's really a matter of personal taste. One is unlikely to find a field where, as a beginner, one could make substantial contributions. When one is a beginner in any field, you're going to be learning the basics. And so I would say pick a basic area that interests you and begin working in that area of apologetics. And then over time, I'd say expand. Now, how much you expand is up to you. You may want to go super deep in some area, and that's fine. You may choose to go deep in multiple areas and become a generalist, which is what I've tried to do. I don't think there are a whole lot of areas that are essential to apologetics that aren't having some service. There are people who have a historical orientation who are doing apologetics work. There are people who have a scientific background who are doing apologetics work. There are moral theologians who are interacting with apologetics. So you have apologists in a lot of these different areas. I would say that there could be more people who are knowledgeable about science doing apologetics. And I would say in particular, there could be more people who are knowledgeable about parapsychology doing apologetics, because there's almost none of them these days. I'm the only one I'm aware of that is really doing that. But it's important to learn the basics first, and then one can branch out into other areas.
All right. That makes sense, Chandy?
Yeah. And then if you don't mind, another thing is that typically when I have like little discussions with either Protestants or agnostics, I use a lot of logical reasoning to kind of Trent brought up the Socratic method, kind of questioning them. But I also want to be able to kind of expand my knowledge in what is the using biblical references like you do, like you, Jimmy, and Joe, and what's it called, and Trent. You guys can pull up Bible verses out of the thin air, which is absolutely amazing to me. So I've been trying to listen to Bible in the Ear podcast with on the Hallow app, and that's been helping. But what else can I do to help with that?
Well, so I would say reading the Bible all the way through is good. That's a needed foundation. I would say also over time you will learn which verses are most relevant to apologetic discussions, because they're not all equally relevant. But there are certain verses that are, like Matthew 16:18. That's very relevant to Protestant Catholic apologetics. It's the "You are Peter" passage. And over time, just by interacting apologetically with people, you will learn those verses. You could, if you want, you could make a study of a particular area of apologetics, like Protestant Catholic apologetics, and make a list of the verses that come up most often, both in Protestant arguments and in Catholic arguments. There's also another step, though, that you should take, and this is one that a lot of people tend to skip. You do need to read the entire Bible for general background, and you do need to look at individual passages that are relevant to the subjects you're going to be discussing. But you also need to do a middle step, which is learn how to read and interpret the Bible in its original context, not just in an apologetic discussion. If you're in an apologetic discussion and there's going to be a temptation to view a verse through an apologetic lens, and say, oh, here's a verse that sounds kind of like what I want to prove, so let me grab it and use it. And that results in a kind of any stick will do style of apologetics, which leads to what's called proof texting, in the negative sense of grabbing a verse as proof, even though it doesn't really prove what you want it to. So what needs to happen, and this is, I think this is true of apologists generally, what needs to happen is they need to get a broader foundation in terms of what's called exegesis, how to read and interpret Bible passages in their context, and not simply grab a verse because it sounds like it proves what I want, because frequently it's actually not proving that. When you're viewing verses through an apologetic lens, it's like when you have a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. When you're viewing Bible verses through an apologetic lens, every verse looks like it's proving what you want it to prove. But we need to check that tendency and step back and learn to read Scripture not through an apologetic lens, but through the lens that the original author intended. Because the original authors were not apologists. They were not writing for an apologetic audience. And so we need to learn to think, what did they mean by this? And then you can ask a secondary question of what lessons can I learn that are of apologetic value from the text? But I need to understand it on its own first.
Andy, thanks very, very much. You might get started on that is you could check out Carlo's podcast, Sunday Catholic Word. Just go to sundaycatholicword.com, where he just takes the Sunday readings and looks at them the way an apologist might look at them. Thank you, Andy.
Actually, that's kind of the opposite of what I was recommending, which was looking at Scripture not as an apologist would, but as the original author and audience would, and only secondarily looking at it in terms of what would an apologist say.
Fair enough, but I do think that's what Carlo. Well, I don't know. Maybe you feel that Carlo doesn't do that, but it does seem to be that Carlo does. Or just that I made the connection wrongly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, fair enough. Andy, we got to take a break, however. Thank you very, very much for the call. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin on Catholic Answers Live.
Hello, this is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Keep your dial tuned to Catholic Answers Live.
In Morse code, the sequence SOS is a distress call. It's been said that it stands for Save Our Souls. Well, right now our world is in big trouble, and we're putting out an SOS call for help. Will you answer that call? St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, has hundreds of teams who share the good news with souls who don't know Jesus. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization. Visit streetevangelization.com to get involved.
It's You Choose Week on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie starting Monday.
This is a week-long celebration of topics suggested by you, the Take Two family.
Your submissions are always welcome at take2show.com, and we will be spotlighting some of the great ideas you bring to the table on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, all next week, noon and midnight Eastern on EWTN Radio.
And it's your topics, so as a member of the Take Two family, you are the conversation.
You Choose Week on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Jimmy Akin, our guest. It is Open Forum. You are welcome to call with your question because even if we don't get to it this hour, Jim Blackburn will be here with us second hour. And if you've got a question about the faith, you are welcome to call and ask it. 888-318-7884. Going to go now to Nick in Minnesota watching on YouTube. Darren, I got logged out. Can you press number 6 for me? Nick, welcome. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hey, Jimmy. So I was just wondering, what would be your response to Father James Altman's video, Bergoglio is not the Pope? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I haven't watched the entire video yet, but I am aware of it, and I've watched part of it. And from, I would say, two things. The first is he's mistaken. All the evidence is that all the serious evidence, if you know how to process the evidence, all the evidence is that Jorge Bergoglio is the Pope. Pope Francis is the Pope. There is no serious doubt about that. And the people who argue to the contrary have various misunderstandings, which are sometimes quite profound. For example, there is a theory, and this is only a theory, this is not church teaching, but there was a theory that has been common historically among some theologians, not all theologians, but just some theologians have proposed a theory that if a pope formally taught heresy, he would cease to be pope. Well, number one, that's only a theory. That's not church teaching. That's just a theory, and there are other theories. But secondly, Pope Francis ain't taught heresy. And if you don't recognize that, then you either don't understand what Pope Francis has taught, or you don't understand what heresy is, or both. And so, so there is just no grounds for saying that Pope Francis is not Pope. Pope Benedict resigned. Pope Francis was elected. The College of Cardinals all swore loyalty to him, and there is no indication that there were any election irregularities that would undermine his election. Sometimes people say, "Oh, well, the St. Gallen Mafia was caucusing for votes." No, duh. That happens in every conclave, and that is not forbidden. If you read the Apostolic Constitution that governs conclaves, it does not forbid cardinals from saying, "Hey, who do we like? Who do we want to vote for? Let's see if we can get enough votes for our favorite candidate." That is not prohibited. People simply who make this argument simply have not read the document with sufficient care. They don't understand, if they bring in the idea of heresy, they don't understand the concept of heresy. And in watching the parts of Father Altman's video that I've watched so far, I was profoundly disappointed in the arguments that he used because they were lousy. And he was regularly slurring over distinctions that are vitally important in the law. And so I would say it was a very unfortunate video. He used very unfortunate reasoning. And while I can't judge his heart, it was objectively sinful for him to make this video because it is a scandalous video, meaning it will have a tendency to lead people into the sin of schism. And leading someone into the sin of schism is objectively sinful. So I can't judge his heart, but I thought it was a video that was ridiculous, ill-informed, and scandalous in the proper sense of the term, meaning having a tendency to lead people into sin.
Nick, I'm grateful for the question, and that seemed like a perfectly clear answer to me, so I hope that it was helpful to you. I am going to try to get more folks on because we are getting near the end, and every line is full. Deborah is in Canada watching on Facebook. Deborah, thank you very much for the call. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hello.
Hi, Deborah. You're on the air.
I'm a Catholic. Hi. I'm a Catholic mother. My adult child is 38. And from a Catholic perspective and viewpoint, how much financial support do we provide for our adult children when they keep coming to us? I just don't know. It's becoming to be an unhealthy point, and it's playing with my health and my well-being. And yet, when I think of it, I think of Mary following Jesus to the cross, right to the very end, all the suffering she went through as a mother. I think of when they say, lay down your life for a friend. I just don't know how to reconcile this in my mind as to what I should do.
Well, Deborah, I want to give you the best answer I can. So the first thing I would say is you are not Mary and your son is not Jesus. God had special missions for Mary and Jesus that entailed them doing things that ordinary people are not called to do. Ordinary men are not called to go die on a literal cross. Ordinary women are not called to witness their son die on a literal cross. So don't use what happened with Mary and Jesus as a standard for what you and your son need to do, because you are different people and you do not have the missions that God gave to Mary and Jesus. So don't use their actions and say, I've got to live up to that exact same level. What your mission as a parent is to raise children to a successful adulthood. Now, they have free will, so you can't control what happens once they're an adult. But once they are an adult, you ordinarily, this would be the ordinary situation, is you ordinarily would not continue to give them financial aid, because they're an adult. Unless they're disabled or something, they should be earning their own living at that stage of life. Now, can there be exceptions to that? Yes, of course. We do continue to have ties of blood and family to adult children, and they can get into difficult situations where they need temporary help. Or they could even permanently, if they became disabled, they could need help permanently. And obviously, we don't want to just turn them out on the street. So there are situations in which it can be reasonable to help an adult child financially, but that needs to be in a limited way on a temporary basis. The child should use what help you're giving them to get into a more stable situation where they're not having to repeatedly come to you for assistance. And if they are repeatedly coming to you for assistance, then you need to look at the situation and say, why is this? Is there really a need here? If there is a need, why is there this ongoing need? And is there something that can be done to correct it? And so there could be any number of reasons, and I don't know what they are in your situation, and unfortunately we don't have time to explore it more thoroughly, but I'll give just one example. Suppose that a child keeps coming to a parent for financial help because the child has a gambling problem. And when you give the child money, the child goes and gambles it and then needs to come back for more money. Well, if that's the reason for the child keep coming back, if that's the reason the child keeps coming back, there's a grammatical construction that'll work. Then the obvious solution is address the gambling problem. And then the child won't need to come back. And you can tell the child, I'm sorry, but it's become clear that there's a problem here. I think you need to address this problem. You need to get some help. There's counseling and stuff for people who have gambling problems, and you need to address that because that's feeding this situation. And if the child says, I'm not going to, then the loving thing for the parent to do would be to say, then I'm afraid I can't keep helping you, because I want to help you get to where you need to be. And where you need to be is financially independent, assuming that's possible. And so I'm not going to subsidize a lifestyle that keeps you from getting to where you need to be. And I don't know that your child has a gambling problem. Probably not, but there may be some problem or collection of problems that your child has that keep resulting in the child being back in this situation, and those problems need to be addressed. And so I would work lovingly with the child to try to identify, why does this keep happening? And if the child doesn't want to work with you in that process, or if the child says, I'm not going to take the advice to deal with this situation, I'm not going to change my behavior, then you would be reasonable as a parent to say, well, my goal is to try to help you get where you need to be. Where you need to be is financially independent, and I'm not going to subsidize a pattern of behavior that keeps you from getting to where you need to be. And I'm doing that out of love, because I'm not going to be around forever. You need to get to this point, and I want to help you get there. That's how I'm loving you. And so that's kind of a general framework that I would propose that you consider in navigating these issues. I know it's very difficult to navigate these issues, but that's the general framework I would suggest to you.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Oh, very good, Deborah.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for the call and for the question. And I'm looking at the phone lines, and there's still a bunch of folks on the line. So hang on. Jim Blackburn's going to be here with us for the second hour. One line open, soon to be two lines open, I think. You're welcome to call 888-318-7884. If you have a question about the Catholic faith, this is your opportunity to ask, whether you're Catholic or not. 888-318-7884. Second part of Jimmy's 2 parts on reincarnation tomorrow on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Jimmy, thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing you here in California soon.
My pleasure. Not if I see you first. I mean,
oh, wow.
I'm looking forward to it too. See you next week.
See you next week, Jimmy. All right, right back with more Open Forum on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. As promised, Jim Blackburn is our guest this hour, and you can ask anything you'd like to ask about the Catholic faith. If you've got a question about the Catholic faith, whether you're a Catholic or not, whether you're Christian or not, whether you're a believer or not, if there's something you'd like to know about God, about the Bible, about the sacraments, about the teachings of Jesus, about morals, you can call and ask. This is your opportunity, and I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of lines open, so this is a great time to call. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Jim and I were just discussing our hair before we went on the air, and I will explain that momentarily. But Jim Blackburn, longtime member of the Catholic Answers family, and the founder of CatholicQuestions.com. You should visit it. You should check it out, CatholicQuestions.com. Jim Blackburn, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Si. Appreciate it.
In our lives, we have taken an opposite approach to our hair.
Yeah, yours is very short right now, and mine's a little on the long side.
A little on the long side. I would say it's beyond Unabomber. I would say it's longer than the Unabomber's hair.
You know, back in the 80s, when I was in college, I had long hair.
Oh, you did?
But as soon as I got out and I joined the corporate world, mortgage banking, I got a haircut, and for my entire career, I had short hair. And then a few years ago, actually before the pandemic, for various reasons, potentially a podcast or a program of some sort that I was going to be on would I would play a part, I'd play a role, and I would have long hair in that. And so instead of makeup and wig and all that, I just started to let my hair grow out. The pandemic put an end to all of that, and it's never come back as far as the
But the hair is a permanent fixture now.
The hair, my wife likes it, so I keep it. It's fun.
I should probably ask my
feel
wife.
like I'm in college again.
Yeah, that is nice. Yeah, because I had the long hair as a youngster, and I don't think I got rid of it till I was almost 30. And because I never was anything fancy like a mortgage banker or anything, like if you're just sweeping up, they don't make you cut your hair. And so, but I couldn't take the long hair anymore. It was I don't know, it just got to be too much for me. So I cut it all off, and I've never had it back. And I like having this.
Well, you do still have a full head of hair, and a lot of guys at your age don't.
I don't know. I think I don't know about that, Jim. I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
I just turned 60, and a lot of guys my age are either losing their hair or their hair is gray, and I've been blessed, I guess.
I was going to say, nobody ever says to me, "You look young for 60." I'm not quite 60 yet. You look, but Jim, you look young. Like you really look young for 60. You don't look 60 at all.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Now that I hate you, how about we take some calls?
Okay, let's go.
All right. Let's go to Gracie in Dallas, Texas. Gracie, thank you for the call. Go ahead with your question for Jim Blackburn.
Yes, my question is, right after we die, do you think that we see our life flash before us, or does God take us to a different universe where there's no time, like a time limit, and we just go on from there?
Okay.
Okay, Gracie. Well, as far as our lives flashing before our eyes, that's an old saying. That's an old thought that people have expressed in the past. We don't know. No one has lived through death to tell us about what they saw just before they died, or at the moment of their death. So we don't really know the answer to that. That's a speculation, I would say. But what we do know, what the church teaches, is that as soon as we die, we are judged by God. And that means that this is called a particular judgment. And that means that our lives are looked at. Did we die in God's friendship or not? If we did die in God's friendship, what reward is due to us for the good works that we did in our lives, the love that we shared with others and with God, our capacity for love, all of that plays into what our reward would be in heaven. Now, it could be that we die in God's friendship, but we still have a little bit of a mess to clean up. Our sins have been forgiven, but there are some consequences of those sins that we still need to take care of. And God gives us the opportunity to do that before we enter heaven. And that's what we call purgatory. So purgatory is not some sort of really a third state so much as it is just a preparation for someone who has died in God's friendship to finish dealing with any of the consequences of his sins that have already been forgiven and get that cleaned up before entering heaven. You know, in the book of Revelation, we're told nothing unclean shall enter heaven. In the letter to the Hebrews, we're told that we must strive for that holiness without which no one will enter heaven. So we have to be holy and clean to enter heaven. And if we still have some consequences that we need to take care of for our sins that have already been forgiven by God, and our relationship with God has been restored, but there are still some of these consequences we need to take care of, God gives us the opportunity to do that, and then we go to heaven. That's what we know. We know that if we do not die in God's friendship, God will honor that. That will have been a choice that we have made, and God will honor that for eternity, meaning that we'll spend eternity separated from God. We have some graphic pictures of that in Scripture, you know, a lake of fire and the idea of Gehenna, the place where there will be gnashing of teeth and these sorts of things. So it's not pleasant, but the reason that it's not pleasant, we know, is because we're created to spend eternity with God. And if we've rejected that, and we've rejected it for eternity, we're never going to fulfill or be fulfilled in what God created us to be. And that's a loss. There's a loss there. There's an eternal loss, and that's the eternal loss of beatitude, of joy, love in heaven. But if we die in God's friendship, then we are assured of going to heaven. We're not told what heaven looks like. We are told that, St. Paul says, "Eye has not seen, ear has not heard what God has prepared for those who love him." It's beyond our imaginations how glorious it will be in heaven. So we can, and a lot of people have speculated on what that might look like, but one thing we can know is it will be beyond our wildest dreams or wildest expectations, what God has prepared for us in heaven. So, Gracie, but in response to your specific question, we don't know what, as human beings, just before death, what we might see. Some of these ideas of seeing a light or seeing a deceased loved one coming to greet us, or even seeing Jesus or seeing Mary. These are not teachings of the church. These are speculations that have come about over time, and we don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, Gracie?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I hope the guy has good hair.
Thanks, Gracie.
Maybe for me.
One of us has good hair. Let's just put it that way, Gracie. Thank you very, very much for the call. I appreciate it. I hope you'll call again as more questions come up.
Which one of your hairs is good?
No,
the left one or the right one?
They're not long enough to be good or bad. They're neutral right now. That's how short my hair is. Gracie, what a pleasant conversation. Thank you very much for the call. I really do hope we'll get to hear from you again. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with the long-haired, young-looking Jim Blackburn right after this.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
Do you have a question but prefer to ask it privately? Catholic Questions can help. Go to CatholicQuestions.com to ask your question online, email us, drop us a letter, or give us a call. Longtime Catholic Answers Live apologist and author Jim Blackburn or another Catholic Questions apologist will be happy to assist you. Catholic Questions proudly supports Catholic Answers Live, so visit us at CatholicQuestions.com today. That's CatholicQuestions.com.
The most original Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
On Mother Angelica Answering the Call,
Father Joseph and Doug Keck mind decades of phone calls answered by Mother Angelica. Mother dishes out teaching, advice, laughter, and plenty of prayers as she takes calls from her family.
Mother Angelica answering the call, Sunday afternoon, 2 Eastern, on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Jim Blackburn, our guest. Our number, 888-318-7884. It's open forum. Jim, I usually like to reserve some time when you're on in case there's any announcements that you want to make. Have you got any big announcements that you want to make today, or should we just go right back to that?
I actually do, and it may be a little,
how
little early.
I mean, that's great. Go ahead, Jim.
It's a very, very early announcement, but at Catholic Questions, we have secured a sponsorship for the 2024 National Eucharistic Congress in Indianapolis. So we are going to be there. There's supposed to be 80,000 Catholics there, and we're going to have a booth for the entire week. So if anyone's going to the conference in July of next year, keep us in mind. Remember that we will be there, and I'd love to meet you. Some of the other apologists at Catholic Questions will potentially be there. So we're really looking forward to that. It's great exposure for us. It lets people know we exist and what we do, because that's what we're here for. We're here to serve people, answer their questions, and be that provider to them if they want to ask a question confidentially and get an answer that they can trust is faithful to the magisterial teaching of the church. Then they can come to us for that. So we're going to have a booth there set up. We might have some giveaways over the course of the week, but I wanted to get that announcement out there right now because people are already making their arrangements to go to Indianapolis next summer, and I want people to know we will be there. Now, in conjunction with that, a lot of dioceses around the United States are having their own Eucharistic Congresses this year or early next year. And I'm in the Diocese of Orange, just north of you in San Diego. And our diocese is having a Diocesan Eucharistic Congress called I Am, and that is going to be next month, October 20th and 21st. And Catholic Questions will be there as well. We'll have a booth and a table set up. So if you're from the Diocese of Orange and you want to come see us, please stop by our booth. Or if you're going to the Congress at the Christ Cathedral on the 20th or 21st, stop by and see us. Catholic Questions apologist Chris, who is here in the Diocese of Orange, will also be there part of the time at least. To help me out in the booth. And so you'll be able to meet him. Maybe you've already had questions answered by him. But Chris and I will both be there, and we hope to see you at the I Am Diocesan Eucharistic Congress in Garden Grove, actually, at the Christ Cathedral on August 20th, or the main event is actually on August 21st.
In a related announcement, Catholic Answers will have an even bigger booth at this year. No, that's not really true.
I'm sure. Well, you're a lot bigger than we are.
I'm just trying to compete with you. I'm trying to get.
Well, as long as we're talking competition, I got to say these conferences are not cheap. And if anyone feels so inclined, we do have a support us page at CatholicQuestions.com where people can make a donation to help us out. And we're hoping to, get enough funding to pay for this so that it doesn't come out of our pockets. So. You gave me an opportunity to mention that, Si.
Not intentionally. I was completely unintentional on my part. I'm going to just refute one thing that you said. You said there's going to be 80,000 Catholics in Indianapolis. I think it's going to be at least triple that. That's what I think is going to happen. They're going to at least triple that.
That was a very early estimate.
Yeah.
I haven't seen an update to that. That may have been updated.
It's going to be big and beautiful, and lots of people should start making their plans now. It's going to
be. It's taking place at Lucas Stadium, where
they're going to have to. That place is dinky compared to what they're going to need. They're going to have to move this to where do they do the Indianapolis 500? To the Brickyard. That's how
Speedway.
big. Yeah, Indianapolis Speedway. Okay, whatever. I
used to live in Indianapolis, by the way, a long time ago. I'm looking forward to going back.
Yeah, I hope I'll see you there. I don't actually know if I'm going, but I've been begging to go. Zach's in Ohio. Zach, thank you very much for the call. Go ahead with your question for Jim Blackburn.
Hi, guys. Thank you for taking my call. I am a Catholic school teacher in Ohio. I teach at a high school. And just recently, the diocese that we are in, our bishop addressed a letter to everybody in the schools about how he wants to handle using things like pronouns and safe spaces. And I think he made the right call. But our high school administration sent out an email saying that since we're not a diocesan school, we're sponsored by an order, that we don't technically have to take that as an order, and they're kind of trying to sidestep the issue. So I guess the thing that I'm looking for is how much of this diocesan, how much of this bishop's statement actually applies to us if we're not a diocesan school, and if it doesn't apply to us, where can I look solid ground to stand on to try and push back on what's happening in the school?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know who your bishop is or where you are, but the bishop of a diocese is the top legislator, let's say, in that geographic area, and that would include having jurisdiction, let's say, over every Catholic institution, even if it's not a diocesan, if it's not part of the diocese, but is part of, say, a Catholic a religious order, or say. Now, the religious order, of course, is going to be have its own authorities and its own hierarchy, but to operate in the diocese, they need to operate in cooperation with the bishop. So the bishop is going to be, I would say, the default authority in the diocese, and I think you said you think that would be a good thing. I don't know what the bishop has said, but it sounds like if the bishop is wanting to recognize the truth rather than put pronouns in people's mouths that deny the truth, then I think the bishop is doing the right thing. Is that the tack that your bishop is taking?
Yeah, I probably should have clarified on that, but yes, he is. Okay. He's saying that the pronoun issues are harmful, and I'm for that. It's a little contentious in my environment, which is kind of why I was reluctant to share the diocese in the school.
I understand.
But I'm just trying to find out what I can bring. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, Zach, in the school where you're working, I would use, just off the cuff, I can think of two things that I would say. And number one, I would say, well, I am a subject of the bishop, and I want to embrace what the bishop has said, at least for me in my classroom, and what I'm doing. And the second thing I would mention that is just kind of more broad in scope is that I would say it's explain to your principal or whoever that it's never okay to do evil, even that good may come of it. And lying is evil. Now there are different measures of the evil of lying, different gravity based on whatever the lie is that you're telling. But using pronouns that do not correspond to the person's sex, to me, that's a form of a lie, and I couldn't do that. And I would bring up the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and of course just the constant teaching of the Church that it's never okay to lie, and it's never okay to do something evil like that, so that good may come of it, whatever that good might be, even if it's just cohesion. That's not a good enough reason to commit a sin. So I would encourage you to consider those ideas and going one or both of those routes. But it sounds like at least you've got the bishop on your side, and that's not a small thing. So keep that in mind. Okay, Zach.
I disconnected from Zach, so I'll just say thanks, Zach. Thank you very much for the call and for the question. Boy, it is one that we are all facing more and more in many places where we never thought we would face these questions. But they're welcome here as they come up, because sometimes they need some delicate parsing. Sometimes they don't need delicate parsing. They just need clarity. But we're happy to take those calls and questions. I'm going to go to Jeffrey now in Longmont, Colorado. Jeffrey's listening on 1060 AM. Jeffrey, thanks for the call. Go ahead with your question for Jim Blackburn.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Cy and Jim. So my question is, normally, I should say a happy Thursday to you.
Well, thank you.
But my question is, thanks. Normally, we don't impute the sins of the father to the children, but for some reason, original sin is different. And I'm wondering why that is, maybe other than because God said so. I mean, is there like some underlying rationale for why that is?
Okay. Yeah, Jeffrey, you used the word impute, and I'm hoping you're not trying to get into a technical sense of whether it's imputed or not imputed. I hope you're just using that as a word to mean that the sins of a father, the children are not responsible for the sins of the father. And if that's what you're saying, then you're right. That children are not responsible for the sins of their parents, but that doesn't mean the sins of their parents don't affect them. Imagine, for example, that a father robs a bank and goes to prison. You know his children are going to be affected by that, whether it be they live in poverty from then on. They don't have a father figure at home. They're not close with their father. They don't have other brothers and sisters that they might have had otherwise. These types of things. The sin of the father does affect the children. And when it comes to original sin, it's very similar to that. Adam and Eve were given grace to live in harmony with God, and they threw that grace away. But that was a gift from God. When they sinned, original sin, they extinguished that grace in their souls, and so they did not have that grace to pass on to their children, and their children didn't have that grace to pass on. Grace comes from God, and because humanity, we say that human nature was corrupted by original sin, and that corruption, the primary corruption of that, is the loss of sanctifying grace and the inability to pass along sanctifying grace to Adam and Eve's children and down through history. Jesus reverses that by coming and experiencing the same temptations that Adam and Eve experienced, but not succumbing to those temptations. And then he ended up dying rather than commit a sin. And by doing so, since he took on human nature when he became man, he reversed this a lot of, at least, the effects of original sin. He didn't completely cure the human nature, but he did give human nature back this ability, and he gave us the wherewithal, the means to put grace back in our souls. And of course, that begins with baptism, and then we fortify that grace and build that grace through the other sacraments. And this is the way that we get that grace today. The ordinary means of grace is the sacraments that Jesus gave us. He's sometimes called the new Adam because he reverses what the first Adam did. And so that's a great gift again to humanity, and we have that now. But grace is not something that we can pass on to our children is when we generate children, when we procreate, but it's something we can pass on to our children by getting them baptized and introducing them to the church that Christ gave us, the Catholic Church, and having them receive the sacraments and grow in their love of God and love of neighbor. These things reverse the damage in a way that Adam and Eve did in the Garden of Eden. So, Jeffrey, I hope that helps. Do you have a follow-up on that, or?
No, I appreciate the explanation. That makes a lot more sense than some of the other things I was reading. I'm going to have to mull on that. And I may have some follow-up questions another time, but thank you so much.
Okay. Feel free to ask your questions. If you want to follow up, you can always contact me at CatholicQuestions.com. Send an email over there, and we'll help you that way too.
Do you give free books at CatholicQuestions.com? Okay,
No,
Jeffrey,
no.
we do. I'm going to give you a free book from CatholicAnswers.com. How about Why
one
We're
of mine?
Catholic? Send Jeffrey a copy of Why
How
We're
about one
Catholic.
of
It's
mine?
not a competition, all right? I don't want you to think of it as competition. It's just that we give out free books, and not everybody does. I'm just saying not everybody does. I'm not naming
Yeah.
anybody. Should I give him one of your books? All right, what's the name of the book you want him to have?
You've got 6. I've
I'd
got
pick
6
one.
books published by me.
Pick one.
How about 20 Answers the Early Church?
20 Answers the Early
I
Church.
understand that's one of my best sellers. So
Okay,
send me
good.
that
Very
one.
good. Jim Blackburn is our guest. It's open forum. There's 2 lines open, so you can still get in the queue before the end of the show to get your question answered if you'd like. 888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH. Right back after this. When the resurrected Jesus appeared to disciples on the road to Emmaus, they didn't recognize him until the breaking of the bread. The same is true today. In the Holy Eucharist, we really meet Jesus. In The Eucharist is Really Jesus, author Joe Heschmeyer explains how knowing Jesus in the Eucharist is the key to understanding all of Christian faith. Order your copy of The Eucharist is Really Jesus today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers Monthly Giving Club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
Is relativism dead? It sure seems dead. Each day, new moral demands are made and they are presented to us as absolutes. Everything, from transgender ideology to physician-assisted suicide, is presented as a moral good that all right-thinking people must accept. But Catholic Answers' own Carlo Broussard says look deeper, and you will see today's moralism is just relativism dressed up in new clothes. Carlo's eye-opening book, The New Relativism, shines a light on how the sacred moral teachings of this age cover up a deep denial of moral truth. Order your copy of The New Relativism today at shop.catholic.com and be prepared to defend the truth against aggressive relativism. The New Relativism at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Hi, this is Janet Williams. You don't have to be a woman to enjoy Women of Grace tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern here on EWTN Radio. Now, back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Jim Blackburn is our guest, the author of, as he said, 6 books for us here at Catholic Answers, but also for a long time he ran the forums here at Catholic Answers, and now he has a fantastic organization called Catholic Questions, which will answer individual questions. If you've got a question about the Catholic faith, or got something that's happening in your life regarding the Catholic faith that you need help with, they will help you out with that, CatholicQuestions.com.
And Si, just to clarify, I didn't run the forums at Catholic Answers.
I thought you did.
No, I was involved in the forums. I was in the Ask an
Oh.
Apologist forum. I did answer some questions in there, but no, I supervised the Q&A department. So that was the one-on-one Catholic apologetics.
I don't know. I had those two conflated in my mind, but I see what you're saying. Yeah.
The forums were overseen by one of the apologists in the Q&A department, but I really had very little to do with that. So I don't want to take credit where credit's not due there.
No, okay, I got you. All right, well, let's go to Michael in Los Angeles, California, watching on YouTube. Michael, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Jim Blackburn.
Yes, thank you. I called yesterday regarding a friend of mine, and I just had a follow-up question to that. Maybe Jim can help. So my friend was baptized Catholic and confirmed in the Catholic Church. But when she was 16 or 17, she married a Muslim man and became a convert to Islam. I tried to evangelize her, but she told me that God the Father of Abraham and Jacob is the same God the Father of Catholics. So I don't know how to come back to that, and I'm not sure if her marriage is null because she was underage. So I don't know. This is a tricky one.
So what
is she still married, Michael? Sorry,
She converted to Islam when she was married at 16 or 17 years old. She was not 18, so I don't know if that makes a difference, but she was baptized Catholic and confirmed Catholic.
And your question for Jim, though, about all of this is what?
How can I evangelize her back into the Catholic faith and tell her that she should repent and come back to?
Okay, Michael. Thank you.
Okay. Michael, is she still married to a Muslim?
Yes.
She is.
She's still married.
Okay, so I can understand how she converted because she got married to someone of a different faith, and that's a difficult thing. But I think it's a good thing when parents share the same faith. I think that's ideal, but not when it's not the Catholic faith, quite frankly. The thing I would do probably to evangelize her is start with what you agree on and build from there. And she has already mentioned that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the same God that we as Catholics worship. It is the same God. And the way we say it as Catholics is that Muslims at least claim to worship the same God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But we have very different views of who that God is, and very different views and understandings of what happened after Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, in the Old Testament, we can follow and see exactly what happened with Abraham through Abraham's son Isaac, and we see that, of course, eventually the nation of Israel came about, and the nation had a relationship with God like no other nation, the same God of Abraham. And of course, they were promised a Messiah, and that Messiah came, and that Messiah is Jesus Christ. And Jesus founded one church, and that church is the Catholic Church. So in a nutshell, I would go that direction with her and go historically, and you can start, with the Old Testament, and even then bring in some of the New Testament to show how what the Old Testament prophesies, the New Testament fulfills. And we do see that Catholicism is the fulfillment of Judaism, of the Israelite nation, and the promises that God made to them, the covenant that God made with them. And we have this new covenant in Jesus Christ that is open to the whole world. And it's a beautiful thing. And I would share that story with her and share that history with her, and explain to her that Islam didn't come along until 600 years later, and it was founded by Muhammad, and Muhammad had very different views of who the God of Abraham was than what Christianity had been worshiping for all this time. And he developed his own religion, and that religion is distinct from all other religions, from most other religions, and that it is a monotheistic religion. Islam does believe in one God, but Islam does not recognize the Trinity, that this one God exists as a trinity of persons, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's something that she gave up, I guess, when she left Catholicism. She no longer recognized Jesus as the Messiah, no longer recognizes the Holy Spirit as a person of the Godhead. And by rejecting them, she is really rejecting who God is and who he has revealed himself to be to us. So she's rejecting truth by rejecting her Catholic faith. And she's embracing what she sees as similar enough because it's still the God of Abraham, but that's not enough. God has revealed so much more since the time of Abraham. And so that's why I would go that route with her. But at least you have a starting point. She agrees that the God of Abraham is also the God of Catholicism, God of Christianity, and then build on that, the differences between Islam and Christianity, the history of Christianity, in particular the Catholic Church. And that might help her to see what the Catholic Church truly is and what she has given up in that regard. Catholic Answers has a tract online that you can read and you might want to share with her. It's called Pillar of Fire, Pillar of Truth. And kind of oftentimes when I recommend that tract, I also recommend kind of a sister tract to that called God's Love for You. Share those with her, and then see if you can open up a dialogue with her, beginning with Abraham and going through the history that we see in the Old Testament, bringing us right into the New Testament and into the age of the church.
Michael, thank you very much for the call. God bless you as you proceed. I hope those tracks that Jim mentioned will be helpful to you. You can find them at Catholic.com. I'm going to Portland, Oregon now. Rose is in Portland. Thank you for the call, Rose. Go ahead with your question for Jim.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call.
Well, we're happy to, Rose. We're glad you're here.
Hi, Rose.
Oh, hi. So I am not Catholic, but I am Christian, and I have a strong appreciation for some of the Catholics that are doing really difficult work here, like Kristen Hawkins, fighting for our babies.
I know Kristen Hawkins. She's so good. I didn't know she's Catholic. I kind of guess I kind of take pride in that. She's very, very good at defending life. Yeah.
And then Matt Walsh and him fighting for children not getting mutilated in the battle for gender identity crisis. And
Yes. Yeah.
so I just really appreciate these Catholic cousins that are doing such good work here in this world to try and speak truth and stand up for our children. And so my question is, I have a personal belief that the main goal as a Christian is to have a pure love of God, accept Jesus Christ as our Savior, and then also a pure love for our fellow men. So basically charity.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, it seems to me that the different sects of Christianity are serving purposes where we're able to cast a wider net to help capture more hearts and souls with that, the differing ways, different approaches. And so my question for you is, what are as a Catholic, what are the Catholics' view on non-Catholics? Are we going to hell, or are we all should we unify and really collaborate with each other?
I tell you what, Rose, I didn't. This is a very important question that's going to take an extensive answer. Could you wait through, say, 45 seconds of a break so I can get that out of the way and let Jim take his time answering?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much. Hang on, we'll be right back to hear Jim's answer right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on, Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
One of the biggest mistakes a Christian can make is to try to do good without God's help. St. Therese said, "When we trust only ourselves and not God, our soul becomes incapable of virtue." Her remedy? Works of charity. And the greatest work of charity is to share the gospel. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we encourage you to share the gospel with someone who doesn't know Jesus. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
Proclaiming the faith, changing lives.
The year was 1984. Mother Angelica Live is the only religious program nominated for an award for cable excellence. Later in the year, she wins a Gabriel Personal Achievement Award from Catholic broadcasters and communicators.
To learn more about Mother Angelica's life and the history of EWTN, visit EWTN.com/Mother Angelica.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Rose is in Portland, Oregon. Rose is a Christian, but not a Catholic, and I would like to know the Catholic view of non-Catholic Christians. Specifically, what happens to them? Are they going to hell, or are we all related in the faith, or how do we think about it, Jim?
Okay. Well, the first thing, let's get off the table, is the Catholic Church does not teach that all Protestants are going to hell. And the Catholic Church does not teach that all Catholics are going to heaven. This is it's something that we each individually are given an opportunity to love God and to respond to the graces that He provides us in our lives, and grow in our friendship with Him, and grow in grace with Him, and grow in, as the caller mentioned, she did a little gospel there. We believe that Jesus is the Son of God, God incarnate, and we love God and we love our neighbors. I mean, Jesus said the greatest commandment is to love God, and the second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. So we agree. We definitely agree on that. And in fact, the Catechism of the Catholic Church mentions our relationship with each other. And in paragraph 838 says, the Church knows that she is joined in many ways to the baptized who are honored by the name of Christian, but do not profess the Catholic faith in its entirety, or have not preserved unity or communion under the successor of Peter, who's the Pope. Those who believe in Christ and have been properly baptized are put in a certain, although imperfect, communion with the Catholic Church. So that's where we stand. We certainly recognize, you mentioned, Rose, that we're cousins in the faith. It might even go stronger than that and say we're brothers, sisters in the faith. We share the faith in God, in Jesus, and we share in the commandments to love God and to love our neighbors as ourselves. These are important parts of both of our faiths, and they bond us together in a certain way, but it's not a perfect way. There's more to the faith than that. And just as I mentioned that not all Catholics will go to heaven and not all Protestants will go to hell, the Church recognizes that the greatest opportunity for heaven is through the Catholic Church, and the greatest opportunity for the greatest reward in heaven comes to us through the Catholic Church. And let me explain why. Number one, Jesus gave us the sacraments. In Protestantism, most Protestants don't believe in the sacraments, or they believe that, say, baptism and marriage are sacraments, but they don't recognize the sacrament of reconciliation or the sacrament of holy orders in the same way that we do, the deacons, priests, and bishops of the Church. They fail to recognize the sacraments of anointing of the sick, and so on. There's 7 sacraments, and all of those sacraments Jesus gave us to provide us with grace so that we can grow in our love of God and grow in our love of neighbor. So we have those helps available to us as Catholics that we would love to offer to our Protestant brothers and sisters. But of course, they would need to become Catholic to fully share in those. So we would like to evangelize Protestants and bring them into the Catholic Church while we share so much, and not just in our faith, but in our mission in the world to evangelize and to make the world a better place, a moral place for all of us to live, protect the lives of innocent human beings, especially babies in the womb, and protect the family. Marriage is between one man and one woman, and it's for life, so that they can raise children in the Church and to go to heaven. These kinds of things we share, but there's so much more that we don't share, that we as Catholics want to invite our Protestant brothers and sisters to explore this with us and see what they're actually missing in the Catholic Church. Rose, it's important to understand that Jesus only founded one church, and that is the Catholic Church. And it was that way for 1,000 years until some of those churches under the umbrella of the Catholic Church separated, and then again 500 years ago when Protestantism separated from the Catholic Church. We know though as Catholics that the Protestants today are not responsible for that division. There was a time, well, let's just say going back 60 years before Vatican II, there was a time that the church was still very much in a defensive mode when it came to Protestantism. But in the last 60 years, the church has adopted what we call ecumenism in a much more serious way and recognized that our brothers and sisters who are not Catholic but who are Christians are separated from us, but it's not their fault individually. It's something that it's the way they were raised. And we want to open our doors to them and bring them into the Catholic Church, share the fullness of what Jesus wanted all of his followers to have, that you can only get that fullness in the Catholic Church. So, Rose, that's where we as Catholics stand on this. I invite you to go to the Catechism of the Catholic Church and read the paragraph that I mentioned, 838, and the surrounding paragraphs. And you'll see the Catholic Church does not teach that anyone, just by virtue of, say, what religion they are or what they believe, is necessarily destined for hell. God desires the salvation of everyone, and God provides graces to everyone, regardless of what faith they practice. And God wants everyone to choose to be in friendship with Him and to go to heaven, whether you're Catholic or Protestant or non-Christian. So these are important elements of the Catholic faith that I think a lot of non-Catholics don't understand. So some people will ask, so why be Catholic? Well, that's why I started by mentioning that in the Catholic Church, we have all of the elements that Jesus gave us, the sacraments, the liturgy, everything that Jesus intended us to have on our road to heaven, so that we may have the fullness of what he wanted us to know and grow in love and grow in our faith, so that our reward in heaven will be as great as it can possibly be.
Okay, Rose?
Yeah, we want those rewards.
Absolutely. That's what we're created for.
I'm also, blessings and rewards. That's where it's at. And I'm also wondering if I can get a free book.
Yes, you can. I'll give you why we're Catholic, but was there a special book you had in mind?
No, just whatever comes to mind for you.
Oh, okay. Well, I think why we're Catholic, just because of the nature of the conversation we had, we'd be happy to send it to you. And it's been a real pleasure talking with you. I hope you will call again and we'll continue the conversation. And thanks for letting me know that Kristen Hawkins was Catholic. I didn't know that, and I've been an admirer of hers for about a year. I've been catching some of her stuff because after the Roe versus Wade decision was overturned, I saw her on CNN, and I was like, wow, who is that defender of life? So, Rose, hang on. We'll get your address, and we'll send that book to you. Mika is in St. Louis, Missouri, listening on 1460 AM. Mika, thank you for the call. Go ahead with your question for Jim Blackburn.
Hi, Mika.
Good evening. Hi, I am in an adult RCIA as a catechumen, and we are covering the sacraments. Today we covered reconciliation, holy orders, and anointing of the sick. What should I have left there with, please? And thank you.
Wait, let me ask you this. Were you unsatisfied with what you left there with?
Oh, very satisfied. I just want to make sure I'm what I received is supported by the
Gotcha. Okay.
The other leaders.
Sure, that makes sense. Well, first of all, praise God and welcome home that you're coming into full communion with the Catholic Church.
Wonderful.
Yeah. But Jim, what do you got on the sacraments?
Well, before I talk about them individually, I would hope that you are, Mika, that you have a copy of the Catechism of the Catholic Church. The Catechism of the Catholic Church is, okay, then what I would recommend that you do is go and look up each of these sacraments. The Church has it devotes a large segment of the Catechism to the sacraments and talking about each of the sacraments individually that Jesus instituted, how it is administered, and what goods it provides to us, what graces it provides to us, these types of things. But in a nutshell, the three you mentioned: reconciliation, holy orders, and marriage. Holy orders and marriage fall under the sacrament of vocation, whereas reconciliation is a sacrament of healing. So it's kind of interesting that you would have studied those on the same day. But I would study reconciliation along with baptism. Baptism is the sacrament that opens the door to the other sacraments for us. It's the first sacrament we receive, and it gives us sanctifying grace in our souls, which is the life we need in our souls to live with God eternally. So it repairs, as I mentioned on a question earlier, it repairs the primary damage that Adam and Eve did to humanity by restoring sanctifying grace, the opportunity for sanctifying grace in our souls. But when we sin, we extinguish that sanctifying grace, or we set it aside. And the way that, since we can only receive baptism one time, the way that we receive that grace back and continue building in grace is we go to the sacrament of reconciliation. We confess our serious sins in the sacrament of confession, and the priest sitting in the person of Christ absolves us of our sins, and that puts us back into friendship with God, and we receive that grace pouring back into our souls, and we're once again in friendship with God, friendship with Jesus. Holy orders and matrimony are sacraments that most people will either choose one or the other. Eastern Catholics, in Eastern Catholicism, there are some married priests, but not many in the Western Church. But the vast majority of people will go one route or the other. In fact, the vast majority of people will marry. So marriage it's a vocation. It's a sacrament because the couple are bound together. They become one in their journey on the way to heaven, is the way I like to put it. It's a sacrament. We receive sanctifying grace because the husband and wife help each other get to heaven. That's a primary end to marriage, is help the husband and wife help each other get to heaven. And they have children together, and they help their children get to heaven. So the sacrament of holy matrimony is very important to most Catholics because that's the route we go, the vocation we take, we adopt in our lives. And I'm happy to hear that was talked about in your RCIA program. There are RCIA programs I've been involved in where marriage is hardly mentioned at all. The sacrament of matrimony is hardly mentioned at all. And since that's the sacrament we live every day of our lives as married Catholics, it's something that's very important for all of us to learn about. So again, I would encourage you to go to the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Holy orders, by the way, is going to be the segment that in the Catechism that talks about becoming a deacon or becoming a priest or becoming a bishop eventually. And those are the stages, if you will, the levels of the sacrament of holy orders. So read about all of that in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. And then, Mika, if you have specific questions on any of these, I know where you can go to get answers to them, and that's CatholicQuestions.com. That's my apostolate's website, and we have several apologists who would just love to answer your questions. Okay?
How's that, Mika?
That's perfect. And they did cover baptism first, but it was covered by a different priest for this particular group. So I did have that, and I guess because I was baptized in Protestant Baptist Church, but I was educated Catholic from preschool all the way up through high school. But I was there as a non-Catholic. But I because my parents, my grandmother, they were Baptist, so I called myself. It's just a joke. I call myself mixed. Because I'm more Catholic and My development that I did.
Well, I got to say thanks for the call because the music is playing and we are about out. Jim Blackburn, thank you. A wonderful hour. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Simon.
That'll do it for us. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.